Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today has been sponsored by Stephen Rappaport, the Breakfast King, in honor of and in recognition of Cham Israel Mansour for developing and maintaining his yeshiva, Shubi Nafshi, with top rabbis in Eretz Israel for his tireless work for Am Yisrael, and for the Refuah Shlema of Chanabat Simafega and Eliyahu Shimon ben Mazal Fortuné, and of course, sponsored by Ben Chakshur, dedicated in honor of his wife Limor, and in celebration of the birth of their son Asher Ariel. The week of Kobu, sponsored by David Yash, in honor of you and your substantial capacity to do good today and every day. Also dedicated in honor of the birth of a baby boy to Millie and Eddie Sit, the Marcus family. Siman Tov, Mabruk, and Mazal Tov. That was the first baby girl that I named in the Beit Knesset, was their daughter. It's great to hear the news of the baby boy. We should be zochet to growing families. Oskim b'Torah, u'b'mitzvot. Finally, dedicated loving memory of Danny Safti, Daniel Ben Leah for Shiloshim, sponsored by Dr. Navid Rahmani. Also dedicated loving memory of Simon Shetrit Alav Shalom. Lilu Nishmat Shimon Ben Rabbi Ishaq Masuda, sponsored by Joseph Shetrit and Judah Shetrit and family. And dedicated for the complete and speedy recovery of Asher Ben Basi, sponsored by his granddaughter Daniela Zagi. Dedicated loving memory of Irving Maleh, Lilu Nishmat Yitzhak Mordechai Ben Jamila, sponsored by the Maleh family. And Breakfast in the Class also dedicated in celebration of the birthday of Jill Shanzer by her loving family. I finally got to meet them this past week. Jill's family wishes her many more years of good health as she continues setting an example of how to live an exemplary Jewish life filled with Torah, Chesed, Midot Tovot. And the Shanzer family wishes Rabbi Farhi and his family good health and Yiddish and Nachas as he leads this generation of the Jewish people forward. Chazak Baruch. I wish that was true. I appreciate it greatly. Also dedicated loving memory of Joe Dura, Alav Shalom Nishmat Yosef Ben Chinya. May his neshama have an aliyah. Also thanks to the rabbis for the beautiful words of Torah each day, from Claudia and Marcus Dura and family. And finally, dedicated loving memory of Ms. Lily Safra Leah Shalom, Leilu Nishmat Leah Bat Chana, on her 11 months. The time flies, and we just celebrated yesterday and today the 11th month Askara of Mrs. Safra Bezat Hashem. We're going to be doing something for on the 12th month in the fulfillment of the year. We're going to be doing Bezat Hashem a special day on June 30th, a special askara for her here in New York City. My friends, I'd like to start our class today by mentioning the most powerful beracha in all of the Torah. The most powerful beracha in the Torah is what the Kohanim say. Hashem commanded us to bless b'bracha hamishuleshet b'Torah. The blessing that was put in triplicate in the Torah. The blessing of the Kohanim is so strong, our Chachamim say, that the great rabbis, when they would come from Eretz Israel, who were Ashkenaz, in Eretz Israel, both Sephardim and Ashkenazim do Birkat Kohanim every day. But in Chutz La'aretz, the Ashkenazim only do Birkat Kohanim on the holidays. They don't do Birkat Kohanim during the week. So only Sephardim over here in America or in Chutz La'aretz, they do it, on every day. So many of the great Ashkenaz rabbis that came to visit America or other communities in Chutz La'aretz, when they would arrive here, they would go directly to the Sephardic Minyanim, even though that was not their minhag to pray, in order that they should not miss, they get every day Birkat Kohanim, in order that they should not miss Birkat Kohanim. And I always thought to myself, what a strange concept. Here you have an Ashkenaz rabbi, Gadol Ador, Rabbi Steinman. When he came to Brooklyn, he went to Ateret Torah to pray. They didn't know why. All of a sudden the rabbi walks in. They asked him, why are you praying here? And he said, listen, every day I get Birkat Kohanim. I don't want to miss it. I was thinking to myself, here's a Gadol Ador from Eretz Israel, gets Birkat Kohanim every day. Now he came for 2 days to America. Where does he pray for those 2 days? Prays with the Sephardim because he doesn't want to miss it. How much more so should every Ashkenaz person in America be praying in Sephardic Minyanim because they miss it every day. So I don't know, really I'm not sure, even though Rabbi Friedman just walked in, dear brothers, Be'ezrat Hashem, we should be zocheh to all share in this great opportunity of Birkat Kohanim. I think that's why Rabbi Friedman prays with us every day, because that way he knows he gets Birkat Kohanim. Especially in a Syrian shul, there's almost never no Kohanim. So he's zochet to be able to have Birkat Kohanim together with us. Now, if Birkat Kohanim is the highest bracha, Then in Birkat Kohanim, what's the highest beracha within the highest beracha? The Chachamim tell us the highest beracha is the beracha of Shalom. Yisa Amonai Panav Elecha. Hashem should raise His face, His countenance to you. Yisa Hashem Panav Elecha. V'yasem Lecha Shalom. And He shall place V'yasem Lecha. He shall place Lecha for you or to you. Shalom, peace. Why do we end with that beracha? The Chachamim tell us something very, very important. They explain that in the words of Chazak, there's no such thing as beracha having any sort of kiyum, any sort of consistency, or any sort of continuance if there's no shalom. So as an example, the words of Chazal tell us, right? En keli machzik beracha ela shalom. The only thing that can hold bracha, right, is shalom. If you have a crack in the bottom of your glass, no matter how much you pour in the glass, it's not going to stay in the glass. So shalom is the element which is machzik beracha, which holds beracha. What a crazy thing that is. You know, I was thinking to myself, you have sometimes people, they're ADD, right? They don't pay close attention. The first beracha of the Kohanim, they listened. The second beracha, they're focused. The third beracha already, they zoned out. Yasin lecha shalom. Could you imagine someone who runs around seeking berachot from the greatest rabbanim, does beautiful mitzvot in the hope that God will bless him, prays, fasts, gives tzedakah, waiting for the beracha. And meanwhile, it's not that the beracha is not there, and it's not the beracha is not coming. There's a lack of shalom between him and his friend, between him and his family, between him and his co-workers. And in a place where there's no shalom, what are we seeing? That beracha cannot rest. So here's a person running on a treadmill to nowhere, trying to bring beracha to his life, and he will never, ever, ever get there. Because en keli machazik beracha el shalom. So the most powerful blessing in the world, it has to end with the words Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. My friends, I want to talk a little bit about what this idea of shalom means. The pasuk says, when talking about shalom, the pasuk says, the very interesting pasuk. Some of you may say after Shabbat is over, the extra reading after Havdalah, V'iten lecha. And in there's a very special, beautiful pasuk. The pasuk says, Ki ata shalom, ubetcha shalom, v'chol asher lecha shalom. Could someone translate that pasuk from the beginning? What does it mean? Ki ata shalom. You are peace?
You are peaceful.
You are peaceful, maybe?
From my point of view,
right? Right? V'chol asher lecha, right? Everything you have, peace, I understand. In your house, peace, I understand. In order to have peace, a person has to have, there needs to be a protagonist. It needs to be between me and someone that I can have peace. Right? So, v'chol asher lecha, in all that you have, peace, I understand. Peace between you and your workers and, and the family and your business. I get it. Your betecha shalom, whoa, do we get it. Shalom bayit is so important. But what's ki ata shalom? It's interesting also, Yisa Hashem panav elecha, right, v'yasem lecha shalom, technically, right, even though everything else in the beracha, yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, yer Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka, right? All of these things can be said in the singular. Right? How do you say v'yasem lecha shalom? If Hashem is blessing a person with peace, then He needs to bless both sides of the machloket with peace. It should say v'yasem lachem shalom. Right? What's going on over here? What are we communicating? So I think that there's a beautiful idea that most people they just don't see it, they don't realize it, they don't recognize it. And I'll give you the answer perhaps in two stages. The first thing the Pasuk is telling us is, Ki ata shalom, tcha shalom, choshe shalom. The Pasuk is telling us, there is no way you will have peace in your home if you do not have peace in yourself. But what does peace in myself mean? Who am I fighting with? What does it mean that I have to be peace in order for there to be a secondary beracha? Your house, there should be peace. The answer is, my friends, that the famous line goes, it takes two people, it takes two to tango. Two people need to be able to dance in order for there to be a tango. You can't tango by yourself, that's what I'm told. Hora, you could hora by yourself, but tango, it takes two to tango. Right? It takes two people to fight. And the truth is, it's not true. It doesn't take two people to fight. How many times are you in an argument with someone that you don't want to be in? You're not trying to argue with them, but they're argumentative. David HaMelech says, I am for peace. And my enemies, vehema lemilchama. There are times when I don't want to fight with you. I have nothing against you. I'm not trying to work against you. And the person who with complaints and they're angry. Think about David HaMelech and Shaul. Shaul is chasing David. Why? Because he believes that David's trying to usurp the throne. David's like, I have no interest in the throne. In David's life, David is attacked by people who want the throne from him. They want him dead. They want to go on the throne. They want to be the king. David has no desires. He doesn't want to be the king. He's not trying to be the king. And yet Shaul is running after David. And we can understand the sadness in David as he says, I am for peace, and my enemies are for war. They're fighting with me and I'm not fighting with them. So the first thing the Pasuk is telling us is, you want shalom, don't be busy with solving the other person's problem. Solve your own problem. Ki ata shalom, and then ubetcha shalom, v'chol asher lecha shalom. But how does a person make peace without a partner for peace? How do we do that? So this is really, I think, the meat and potatoes of this beracha, and it's a very beautiful thing. You know, the Kli Yakar writes that immediately following the beracha of the Kohanim, we read in the parasha the chapter of the Nisiim. And the chapter of the Nisiim describes how each one of the heads of the tribes, what did they do? They each brought this korban. It was the same korban. Says the Kli Yakar, if you look how it begins, Vayehi ha-makriv b'yom harishon, and it was that the one who brought on the first day, okay, b'yom harishon, the first person brought his korban et korbano, Nachshon ben Aminadav l'matei Yehuda. The first person to bring his korban was Nachshon ben Aminadav from the tribe of Yehuda. Says the Kli Yakar. Why does it say Vayehi? And he brought. Vav, whenever you have a Vav in the beginning of a word, it's Mosif al inyan rishon. It's like having and at the beginning of a sentence. You could only have and in the beginning of a sentence if there was something that came before that sentence you're trying to link it to. So in other words, I could say breakfast and the class. I can't say welcome to and breakfast and the class. Because what is the and linking to, correct? Vav is always Mosif al inyan rishon. So es Kli Yakar, why would we say Vayihi hamakriv? And it was the one who brought on the first day is Nachshon ben Aminadav. Says the Kli Yakar, because coming off of the beracha of shalom, we recognize that if all of the Nisi'im are going to bring a korban, what's going to happen? They're going to fight over who brought the korban first. There's going to be a disagreement between them over who should be the first, who deserves to be the first. So therefore the Pasuk took the first korban and made it as if there was also someone before him. Vayehi hamakriv. Why? All for the sake of shalom. Now, I thought that there was something very poignant over here. Because who in actual fact brought the first korban? Nachshon ben Aminadav from the tribe of Yehuda. My friends, it's not that Nachshon ben Aminadav happened to go first. You ever see two Jewish people come to a door at the same time? Chavot, 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 chavot. Right? That's not what's going on here. It's not that the Nisi'im were all sitting there, you go, chavot, you should go. Who's the guy who went first? Someone that we already have experienced that he is the person who goes first. When the Jewish people were standing at the riverbank and they were at an impasse, no one knew what to do, they were being told to travel, everyone is terrified. Who takes it on himself with bravery and courage to plunge into the water first? Nachshon ben Aminadav. The guy who goes first, always, even when it's inconvenient. The guy who goes first when it's not about kavod. The guy who goes first when it's dangerous, when there's a price to pay, when you don't know how things are going to turn out. So doesn't it make sense that Nachshon ben Aminadav should go first here if he went first there? It's not a happenstance guy going first. He's earned it. And yet the pasuk says, Vayehi hamakriv. Because for the sake of shalom, Nachshon ben Aminadav needs to present himself, and he needs to be presented as if he just happened to go first, but everyone here is really the same. And the Torah repeats each korban so that no one should feel like their korban was given short shrift. My friends, with all the extra pisukim in the world, with all the extra vavs in the world, if one of these nisi'im wanted to feel slighted, they would. You ever meet someone who's looking to find a reason why they're unhappy? I met someone once, a long time ago. I met someone once for coffee. And they asked me to meet them for coffee because things are terrible. I can't speak at home, Rabbi. You don't know what's going on at home, my family life. I can't speak in the synagogue. There's so many people, who I don't get along with. I don't want anyone to see. I don't want anyone to hear. So he wants to go speak. He wants to go for coffee. Okay. I go to the coffee. I go to the coffee shop. Sit down. I see the guys like this scanning the room. Scanning the room, scanning the table, scanning the coffee, scanning the line. Anyway, I sat down and I said, I know we're here to discuss, your issue that you want to talk about. I said, but I noticed one thing. I said, you're looking so hard to find something that's not right, that's not good, aren't you? He looked at me like this, right? He said, yeah. He goes, I was just thinking the table's not so clean, right? And I was thinking about how it took me so long to get my drink, and I'm noticing how long it took the other person to get his drink. He goes, and then I noticed, that when the lady gave that guy the coffee, she smiled at him. Well, she didn't smile at me. Anti-Semite. And on and on and on, this guy. He had a laundry list. And I said to him, I said, I'd love to get to your issue that you want to talk about. I said, but I just have one question for you. Isn't it exhausting being so angry all the time? Isn't it exhausting being sad, being unhappy, looking to find every possible thing? I said, you think she's an anti-Semite? How do you know? You're not wearing a kippah. How do you think she even knows that the guy's name was Matthew, by the way? It's not like your name was, 2 lattes for Moishi, Matthew was a non-Jewish name. Not that Matthew's a non-Jewish name, but it's not a Jewish name. How do you even know that that's what's going on? So you walked up, already assumed that she's an anti-Semite. I don't know how you figured that out. How do you think you looked at her so that she should look at you and smile at you when she gave you the coffee? I said, the table's dirty. You met your anti-Semite. You did this, you did that. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning. We got a long day ahead of us. One of my grandpa's favorite jokes He used to talk about how Jews love to complain. He said, what's the difference between a Jewish optimist and a Jewish pessimist? A Jewish pessimist says, things can't get any worse. And a Jewish optimist says, of course they can. The Pasuk is telling us, Ki ata shalom. Are you at peace? Forget anyone else. Forget your wife. Forget your husband. Forget your children and your parents and your business associates and the guy who sits next to you in shul and the rabbi and the chazan and the guy who didn't show up to your wedding. Forget everybody else that you're fighting with. Are you at peace? If you're not at peace, no one can be at peace with you. Because a person who is themselves not at peace can't ever find peace with anyone else. Ki ata shalom ubeitcha shalom shalom. And that's why it's telling us over here in the pasuk v'yasem lecha shalom, not lachem. Hashem doesn't give peace to two parties. He gives peace to each individual party. And then they don't resolve their machloket. The machloket stops the matter. Did you hear what I said? When you have peace in you, then when you come to the machloket and they have peace in them, they come to machloket. Does it even matter anymore? Does it even matter? Like you're okay. How many fights do I hear from people? Rabbi, it's not about the money. And then the entire meeting revolves around only one thing, the money. How about the money? Imagine this guy had more money than he could ever spend. Imagine it truly was not about the money. I believe that there would be a resolution. But when a person comes and they're not at peace with the situation, then there's no way forward. My friends, I want to draw this together and then hopefully end on this note. Therefore, the pasuk with the Nisi'im was capable of making them all feel okay. Because even Nachshon ben Aminadav, who had a reason to feel like I deserve to be first, he did not mind them putting a vav in the beginning of his pasuk and saying, you know what, I'm like everybody else. I'm no different. I'm not special. I was great. Chazak u'baruch. My friends, people think that shalom means between people. But as we're learning today, shalom means between you and yourself. Not just to make peace, but to be at peace. So let's kind of parse that. And like I said, that will end. There was a great rabbi, Rabbi Kowalski, who used to teach all the time in his yeshivot that in order to be able to raise students, you really needed to kind of constantly be in a state of mind where you were lifting them up. And he said that, we've mentioned this idea many times. It's not an idea that was originally his, but we mentioned this idea many times. The pasuk says, "Al tochachletz pen yisnaeka," don't give rebuke to a joker, to a scoffer, because he might hate you. Pen yisnaeka. Hocheach lechacham, give tochacha to a wise man, v'yehavecha, and he will love you. The commentators ask, thank you very much for that brilliant piece of advice, Shlomo, but I don't need to give tochacha to the smart guy, to the chacham, to the tzaddik. I need to give tochacha to the letz. So what kind of advice is that? Don't give, rebuke to the person that needs it, because he's not going to like you. So give rebuke to the person that doesn't need it, because then he'll love you. Yeah, but the person who doesn't need it, doesn't need it. The famous idea that's expressed, and Rabbi Kowalski said over, is he says that's not what the pasuk means. What it means is when you're looking at someone who is a letz, who is a scoffer, who's not holding, who's doing the wrong thing, don't see them as a letz. Because if you see someone as a person that you speak down to, that you're condescending, you're pandering to them, what kind of thing is this? What are you doing? The person, before you even finish your sentence, decided he doesn't like you. But if you come to a person who is a letz, and you are hocheach lechacham, you can see that person as a chacham, then v'yahavecha, he'll love you. Ask the rabbi, he says, if this is how we think of the way we give people criticism, the way we teach people, the way we grow people, he says, how will we ever teach people to grow? Doesn't it mean, don't you have to see their faults in order to be able in order to be able to educate them, in order to be able to make them, don't you have to not be naive in the way, this guy, no, Hada, he doesn't have a drinking problem. He just likes the occasional, bottle of whiskey 3 times a day. Right? If that's how you're going to look at a person, you're not going to treat his problem that he has with alcohol, right? And he quoted the most beautiful, beautiful line from Chazak. The rabbis tell us that we know that the moon, it mirrors the light of the sun. And Chazal tell us that the Shemesh is eno ro'eh, does not see the embarrassment, does not see pegam in the levana. We all know, right, especially those of us who like music, that there's something called the dark side of the moon. But you know who never sees the dark side of the moon? The sun. As far as the sun is concerned, what does the moon look like? A beautiful, shining light in the sky. If the job of the moon is to reflect the light of the sun, you know how you have a student that is like that? The Gemara tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu was like the sun and Yehoshua was like the moon. How do you make a Yehoshua? You as the rabbi decide that you'll never see the dark side of the moon. I only see that which is lit up. So ask Rabbi Kowalski. He said to his compatriots, the rabbis in his yeshiva, he said, if we don't see their faults, how do we educate them? And he said something which is so obvious. He said, it's not that you don't see their faults. It's that you do see their faults. But that you never see their faults without seeing the beautiful things about them as well. A person doesn't look at themselves and think that they're terrible for the bad things that they've done, because they always have 1,000,001 answers for every mistake that we've made, right? I'm not a bad person. I was just under a lot of pressure. I'm not a bad person. You don't even know what I was going through. I'm not a bad person. Anyone would have done that. We have many answers for our own failings. So when you can look at your own failings and say in the broader sense, I'm still a good guy, I'm still a worthwhile person, so then you can do that for somebody else. What it means is when you don't see someone else's pegam, means that you don't see their pegam, their flaw, in isolation. My friends, the same message that we say about people, I'd like to suggest that we could say about our lives. What if when you looked at your life, you never saw a pegam, a flaw in your life? What if you didn't see your bad days in isolation, but you saw your bad days in the totality of everything that you've experienced in your life? What if you didn't allow the bad to take over the good? What if you didn't allow the dark side of the moon to be the way you describe the moon? The sun might also know that there is another side to the moon, but that's not the side it looks at. V'yasem lecha shalom. The pasuk is telling us that God is blessing us to be at peace with our lives. And the same way in a fight, being at peace doesn't mean ignoring that there's someone else. It doesn't even mean getting my way. It might mean that there's lots of compromises. But for the sake of peace and peace of mind, I'm willing to look away from what I'm giving away and to focus on what I got for what I gave away. It might be security. It might be happiness. It might be peace of mind. It might be having a loving relationship. In each of those cases, we're not blind to the difficult. We just recognize that the difficult doesn't live in isolation. V'yasem lecha shalom. Hashem should bless us, shalom, that we should wander this earth at peace. On the good days, on the bad days. That we should be able to be at peace with our failings. To be happy with ourselves. To recognize that there's another part of the moon that's shining, even if there's a part of the moon that's dark. Hashem, if He blesses us with that shalom internally, then you know what happens when you meet someone else and you're in a fight with them because they've done something wrong. You know what you think? I also do things wrong. And I can love me even when I've done something wrong. And if I can love me that way, then I can also love and see and comprehend someone else with that same light. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Rabbi